Welcome to Mac Talk, a Middle Tennessee podcast from Mott Haven Arts and Cultural Center in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm your announcer, Kennedy Alvin. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center, offering complete health care for you and your family.
Thank you, Kennedy, and welcome everyone to Mac Talk. I'm your host, John Pitcher. We like to think of the Mac as a cultural town square where we encourage everyone to be their creative best. Nashville's music community has been its creative best this year, at least according to the recent Grammy nominations. Kennedy, I know you're a big music person. What are your top albums of the year? And I bet I could even guess a few of them.
Yeah, you could probably guess a couple. So my fifth on my top five is Goodbye House by Snuggle.
Okay, you're doing a countdown.
I am doing a countdown.
All right.
My top tracks from that is Women Lake and Water in a Pond. They're a band from Copenhagen. Really like them. My number 4 is Who Will Look After the Dogs by Pup out of Canada. My favorite tracks from that is Paranoid, which is a fantastic track. And then Get Dumber featuring Jeff Rosenstock. Number 3 is Getting Killed by Geese. This has appeared actually on a few different top albums list of the year. So I'm sure other people will also say this. My top track from that is Opes Du Cocaine and Trinidad, which is the first track of that album. My second, which is one of the ones you can guess, is Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party by Hayley Williams.
That was one of my guesses.
Yep. My top tracks from that.
All right, let's hear it.
Parachute, Hard, Kill Me, Good Old Days, and Showbiz. I could put the whole album on that though. And then number 1 is Never Enough by Turnstile. No shocker there. Love that album. I could put the whole album on my top tracks. I love that album.
And that is a great album. Where do you listen to your music?
So primarily,
where do you discover this music nowadays?
So a lot of my music discovery has come from the radio station WNXP out of Nashville.
Yay, public radio.
Yeah, public radio. I have them on at my house pretty much 24/7. And if I hear a song that I like from them, I will go on their website because they'll have the little banner at the bottom that says what they're playing currently. And I will put that on my streaming service, which right now it's Qobuz. I switched from Spotify to Qobuz, and I really like it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, and public radio was very important this year with Hayley Williams in particular, because she'd actually decided to drop a recording there. Yeah. Right? And they premiered it. Was it Mirtazapine?
Yep, it was.
If I'm not mistaken?
It was, because I think we actually talked about it on the podcast.
Her ode to antidepressants.
Which, honestly, don't blame her.
Yeah.
Don't blame her for that one, but yeah, it was
and
big
probably radio was appreciating some antidepressants this year, because it's been a tough year.
It's been a tough year for radio.
Yeah.
Support public radio. It's great. Recommend it.
It is totally great. Well, Kennedy, speaking of music, I'm excited to announce that today we are launching our first annual Year in Music Roundtable, an idea, by the way, which was your idea. So thank you very much. To mark the occasion, we've assembled a panel that's second to none. We're joined today by Nashville Scene music editor Stephen Tregesser and longtime jazz critic Ron Wynn. We'll be talking about the top Nashville music stories of 2025, our favorite album releases, the city's ever-changing venue landscape, and much more. We're excited the panel is here. Steve and Ron, welcome to Mac Talk.
Good evening, or afternoon, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for having us.
Well, it's very exciting. I have just been really looking forward to this discussion. It has been an incredibly great year in music for Nashville, I think. I've been excited on so many different fronts. Steve, you are the music editor at the Nashville Scene. You have got a Year in Music issue hitting the stands. According to the time we're broadcasting now, it's hitting tomorrow, December 11th. So I am excited. Tell me, what were the big news stories for 2025?
Oh goodness, it was all over the map. I mean, there was, as always, a lot of venue news. We kind of had 2 big new venues coming into town, kind of on the sort of high side of mid-size. We had the Pinnacle open up downtown, which is operated by AEG, with kind of the nearest competitor to sort of the ticketing and touring leviathan that is Live Nation. They're much smaller, but they're kind of the closest. And then later in the year, actually, Live Nation announced that they were going to open what seems to be kind of a competitor to that venue. It's going to be called The Truth, after the Harlan Howard line about songwriting. And, country music just needs to be 3 chords and the truth. That's going to be over near their headquarters in Wedgwood, Houston. Supposed to open up in fall 2026.
Right.
So we had that come in. We had a new honky tonk called Skinny Dennis open up on the east side, which is it's kind of more in the pattern of bars that you find downtown on Broadway, but has a lot of live music, but it's over deep in the heart of East Nashville. Mm-hmm. So there was some of that. There was
well, and just to back up here, the Pinnacle and the Truth, these are roughly the similar size venues, aren't they?
Yes, the capacity, it's in the neighborhood of 4,500.
Right.
So good size, sort of between around the size of like Grand Ole Opry House.
Okay, what sort of acts are we going to see coming through the Live Nation type acts, or what are we going to see?
Well, I mean, I would, of course, that none of the calendar stuff has been announced yet for The Truth. I mean, they're not even totally sure when it's going to be finished, but my understanding would be that the way that Live Nation typically structures things, it's probably going to be, majority folks who are under contract with them for touring production stuff. So, which is a really broad range, but it's one of those kind of things where, you almost have to work with Live Nation in order to get past a certain level of size of venue you can play sometimes, or scale of tour that you can book. But that's a whole other story for another day.
Right. So what else stood out for 2025 from your vantage points as the editor?
Well, there was a lot of really excellent work across a bunch of different levels of international fame, and across tons of different genres in Nashville. I mean, it's something that is a constant challenge of trying to get my arms around, and I'm lucky to have lots of help from staffers and freelance folks, including you and Ron. Ron, he's deep into the jazz world and the blues world, and other aspects of Nashville that I really am grateful to have his expertise.
And that's what's so exciting about Nashville these days. Nashville is Music City, but increasingly, it's all kinds of music, really, when you think about it. I mean, you've got Jack White here, right?
Very much. Well, and you've
got an emerging hip-hop scene that's very exciting.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, and it's like these are scenes that have been around in different forms for a long time, but it's like it feels like like critical mass is building in different ways, and to some exciting levels. And I don't know, just it's kind of one of the things where we've had a lot of really strong rock and roll stuff historically. That's kind of one of sort of the thing that came to mind for me, was like that was one of the genres besides country that sort of started to become a part of sort of Nashville's cultural association first, even though it was definitely not the first thing that was not country that we had here. I mean, we had this incredible R&B scene on Jefferson Street.
I was about to say R&B on Jefferson Street. I mean, that was some serious stuff. Well, Ron, let me transition over to you, because I just interviewed for this podcast a few weeks ago Lori Meacham, the co-founder of Nashville Jazz Workshop. She and her husband moved to Nashville, I think, in the early 1990s, which is about the time that people started moving to Nashville, and I asked her, what was the jazz scene like then? She says it was pretty underdeveloped at that time. I mean, you would have clubs, you would have places to go play, but you wouldn't necessarily think of it as a big scene. And now, all these years later, it is a much bigger scene, I think, because of a place like the Jazz Workshop, where they actually train you how to do it. And that's the big thing. Why do you have to have a great orchestra or a great anything in a city called Music City? It's because it attracts musicians from all over the world. And that's really what improves your music scene, is having the musicians here, having the publishers here, having the poster designers here, the songwriters. That's really it. Jazz, of course, is just, to me, one of the more original, interesting things that we've got going on in Nashville. It's not identified with it, but it's really great. What were the big stories that you saw on the jazz side? Because I know there are a few.
Well, kind of an interesting thing to me is a city the size of Nashville to have not one but two institutions that are nationally famous as far as teaching and bringing and inspiring the next generation of jazz artists, and that's the Jazz Workshop
Right.
and Blair. And both of those had big years. David Rogers is taking over as the person running the Jazz Workshop now. And of course, Laurie and Roger are still doing different things. Laurie's working on a solo album. Roger's writing a book.
And that's Laurie Meacham.
Laurie
and her
Meacham, right.
her husband's
Right.
was also her bass player. That's
Right.
Spencer.
Right.
Roger
And
Spencer.
Roger's writing a book about very kind of an inside baseball, but still interesting, about jazz arrangements and the history of certain songs and how they were put together. But David teamed up with Jeff Coffin to do the first Nashville Jazz Festival, which is really kind of Nashville's.
And Jeff Coffin is just
Jeff Coffin,
an
sorry.
incredible
Yes.
saxophone player.
Right. Who also runs a record label that put out 5 albums this year.
That's right.
Yeah, but that's.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
How does that man sleep?
Yeah.
When does he sleep?
Yeah, but the first Nashville Jazz Festival was kind of Nashville's version of Newport or Montreux or something. In other words, it's like a 2-day event and a host of different types of jazz performers. And I don't want to take anything away from some of the other things like the Fisk Festival or the Jefferson Street Jazz and Blues Festival, but this was the first time that someone put together a something modeled after the festivals that you see around the world, and it was great to see that. So that was certainly a big thing. Another big thing that didn't get as much notice out of non-music circles as I think it should have gotten is the fact that Blair now has, Vanderbilt University now has in its library the Phil Schaap archives. And for people who don't know who Phil Schaap was, I mean, he's one of the preeminent jazz historians, but he was also a great collector of jazz memorabilia, recordings, photographs, did interviews with a host of jazz music. Well, all of that stuff out of his personal archives is either over at Vanderbilt or going to Vanderbilt. And that's gotten attention elsewhere, but I don't think as many people realize that all of that material can be accessed by the public. Mm-hmm. So that would be another, to me, really, really big story. And the Blair Big Band, which is one of the top student bands in the United States, and it's competed in festivals, won Downbeat Awards, all those things. And that's under Ryan Midag's leadership. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't want to leave out, and I'll preface this by saying, I'm not the world's biggest smooth jazz fan, okay? I mean, but still, WFSK, even within the smooth jazz world, is very, very highly respected, and they do a lot for that community. So, and we do have quite a few smooth jazz artists in Nashville, as well as a lot of great mainstream and avant-garde and all session. So there's so much jazz activity that's happening here. And don't want to leave out Rudy's either. I mean, Rudy's Jazz Room has become like the place to go if you want to hear the people who are in town, who are doing the music on a consistent basis, and are some of the top musicians in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world. We got some of those here.
Okay. Well, we now have a jazz festival. That's huge. I was in Rochester, New York when they started the Rochester International Jazz Festival, and jazz festivals are just fun. They're like big block parties, right. And that's what they bring, and it doesn't matter whether you have a knowledge of jazz or an interest in jazz, everybody likes to go out to a big block party, which is what those things become. We're speaking with Nashville Scene music editor Stephen Tregeser and jazz critic Ron Wynn. We'll be back after this important message.
TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center is proud to support arts education through its partnership with Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center. As a trusted healthcare leader in Sumner County, TriStar Hendersonville believes creativity fosters community well-being. Through its support of the MAC, the medical center helps equip students with the skills, confidence, and inspiration they need to pursue their artistic passions. Creativity heals here. For more information, go to tristarhealth.com.
We're back with our Year in Music panel, Steve Tregeser and Ron Wynn. Well, of course, country music, is well established and ingrained here, and we already have our Country Music Association. Steve, what really stood out from your writers in the Year in Music about country? I know obviously, Lainey Wilson was having a big year, Entertainer of the Year, and she's got a Grammy nomination. A very good radio song, Somewhere Over Laredo. What strikes you about the country world?
Well, with I guess one thing that I try to do, and we as sort of a paper try to do, is kind of focus on some of the stuff that's outside of the mainstream, just because the mainstream folks, a lot of whom are great, some of whom are awful, we'll say, but personal opinion, or personally not.
Our announcer Kennedy Galpin, she has a perfect word for that. It's called mid.
Very much. Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of that kind of stuff. You get a lot of people who are...
It's fine. It's just like I've heard this 7,000 times before, though, haven't I?
Yeah. Well, but there is, so much country activity going on outside of that. Some of the stuff that really stood out to folks in our orbit was the debut album from the Kentucky Gentlemen, who are two twin brothers from Versailles, Kentucky, who have been in Nashville about a decade. They're two young black men. They're openly gay. They and have heard no a lot, but they have really persevered. They've honed their chops. They made a fantastic record called Rhinestone Revolution, and it's got everything you could ask for from a country record. It's like appeals to a lot of different country sensibilities. They're very sharp. They're funny as hell. And it just like, it's the kind of thing that, it's sad that it's a situation where you don't see the mainstream embracing artists like them more because of all the stuff they bring to the table. And, that was one record in particular that really just jumped out to me. But, there's kind of in more of a kind of like 70s country vein. You had, artists like Christina Murray. Her album Little Blue was phenomenal. Margo Price had been kind of moving into some different, kind of expanding her sound out from the sort of like folk country type that she started with, but kind of swung back to like kind of a hard rock and country this year with her album Hard-Headed Woman, which was great. Just some super interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, moving back into the more indie rock lane, we have an interesting situation here in Nashville in that we have a public radio station that really promotes some of the best rock and alternative rock around, and that's WNXP. And they have actually been making news in a way by helping independent artists, get their music out there. One of my all-time favorite stories of the year was Hayley Williams and her Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party, which is one of my all-time favorite albums of the year.
Is that not great?
Period. What a great... But she went to public radio.
Yeah, just, from what I understand, it's sort of, she kind of in the middle of the situation where public radio, like so many other federally funded arts-related initiatives, was, facing a financial crisis. She was like, well, I'm trying to figure out how to do this rollout for this new solo project. And she was like, you know what, I'll burn this single from my album onto a CD and send it down to the local, to the local public music discovery station.
Wasn't that mirtazapine?
Yes.
It was mirtazapine.
Yeah.
It was her ode to antidepressants.
Yeah.
What a great song too.
Dude, it's a ripper.
It's a good song.
Yeah. And it's you know, her supporting the station that, you know, supports her in a lot of ways, but so many other people, and I appreciate from WNXP and from our other like community radio stations and stuff how much they just support such a huge variety of music. Like I know there's a really strong emphasis at NXP on bringing different kinds of soul and R&B and hip hop and you know, alternative R&B and that kind of stuff to the forefront as well. They did, and you know, just gosh, you turn on like Radio Free Nashville or WXNA and you know, you can hear 80 different stations in the course of a week.
Yeah.
And
well, WXNA is one of the most wonderfully schizophrenic radio stations I think there ever was. I mean, they just everything from, you know, Great American Songbook to the best hip hop you can hear there.
do you still host a show on XNA?
I had hosted it. I had some time conflicts. I'll go back at some point. They'll drag me back. I did a show called Fearful Symmetries.
Yeah.
Which was really focused on contemporary, what you would call art music, but it was especially from diverse composers. So just trying to get the stuff out there that people hadn't listened to before. I'll get that back out there. I think classical music has an unfair advantage here at this podcast since I host it. So I wasn't going to talk about that. I was going to talk about another Pulitzer Prize winner, which is Kendrick Lamar. Now, tell me a little bit, Ron, about one of your family members. You've got somebody who's been working with Kendrick Lamar. Is that right?
Actually, he is on tour in Australia right now with Doechii, and my girlfriend's son is doing the video tech for for that tour. And so I hear every day about where they are in Australia. Yeah, but
Okay.
if I could go back to just if you don't mind.
No, go.
Take it to a point that Stephen was making about country. There is a to me, and of course I don't follow this as much as I do some other things, but the emergence of a real legitimate black country movement is,
And that's
to me,
national too.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's one of the big
huge
stories. I mean, you know, you've got.
We also had Beyonce, right? So
Right.
so then that actually raised a whole issue of, well, what is country music?
Exactly,
You know? And,
exactly, yeah.
And it's like, I think she's out here saying, well, I'm reclaiming this. It's us, you know? What about Ray Charles?
Right. Well, like for instance, Reese Palmer getting a award this year,
Right.
from I guess it was the ACM, and of course you got people like Dom Flemings, you got Rhiannon and Giddens. I mean, there's so much happening now, and I can remember. And I'm going to date myself now for saying this, but I can remember doing articles back in the 80s when I was working on the East Coast on people like Big Al Downing, and getting letters from people that saying, you know, white people don't do country music, you know. And so here we are. I look, moving all forward to today, and you've got so many black country artists that are doing really, really interesting stuff, good stuff, you know. And I mean, Valerie June, that's another one who I hope breaks big in 2026 because she's tremendous, you know. So.
Well, I was kind of sensing it when I was just listening to the music over the past year. I had mentioned this to Steve. It's like, well, all of a sudden stuff's beginning to sound kind of interesting because it doesn't sound mid.
Right.
You know, it doesn't sound like exactly what I heard, you know, for the last 10 years on every radio show and or radio program. So that is a real exciting thing about it.
I guess the other issue that doesn't get discussed as much is the difficulty that these artists have getting their music out. Okay, because urban contemporary radio is not going to play them. Okay, and a lot of commercial country stations won't play them either still today. You know, and it's so when you talk to the Miko Marxes and the Reese Palmers and stuff, and they don't like to complain about it because they don't want to get they don't want to damage any chances they might have of getting it. But it's just it's very, very difficult for them to get their music heard. So. So that's kind of the, I guess, the downside to what I'm talking about. But it's still good to see this movement flowering and emerging. So,
Yeah, it's been a really important one in the last few years.
right.
Yeah, and of course, it's Nashville being what it is. It's going to lead the way. You know, I think there's been more growth in commercial music in Nashville over the last 25 years than anywhere else in the world.
Oh, yeah.
You know, including Los Angeles and London. I have a son who is at Berklee College of Music, and we have there's a parents page on Facebook, Berklee parents page, and the kids who are getting ready to graduate, the parents, they always have the same question: where should our kid go after graduation? Should they go to Los Angeles or Nashville? And a lot of them are coming to Nashville because, among other things, you can kind of live better here.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, one, that's something that I think is like, I want to say Molly Tuttle was a Berklee graduate, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Absolute wizard of a bluegrass guitarist, and Grammy nominated for her record this year. But also that's just like that's just such a huge issue, is the livability, affordability piece of, it's just like,
Also, things are closer in, you know? It's like you can, go to Berry Hill and they have some studios there, and you can get musicians to go from one part of Nashville to the other. In a place like LA, everything is totally spread out. Everything's much more expensive. I mean, in terms of just doing recordings and getting your music published. And here in Nashville, of course, it's a village, a music village, and all these people know each other. And, you can put something together pretty, not easily, but I mean, you can put it together and do it much more efficiently here than you could in New York or Los Angeles. That's another thing that I think has been driving this community. We're speaking with Nashville Scene music editor Stephen Tregeser and jazz critic Ron Wynn. We'll be back after this important message.
TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center is proud to support arts education through its partnership with the MAC. As a trusted healthcare leader, TriStar supports programs that nurture creativity. Through its commitment, students gain the resources they need to explore their talents and pursue their passions. Creativity thrives here. For more information, go to tristarhealth.com.
We're back with our Year in Music panel, Steve Tregeser and Ron Wynn. Ron, I wanted to circle back on just one thing. You did touch upon this, but we do have a new leader at the Jazz Workshop, David Rogers. What is different about him? What do you think is going to be changing there, if anything?
Well, from what David has told me, I think, I don't know if change is the right word. I'd say more evolve. When they made the move from Adams Street over to where they are now on Buchanan, there was some question as to whether or not that would work. Okay, and it certainly has proven to be a success. One of the things I think David wants to do is focus on the community interaction and get more interaction, more involvement within the North Nashville community with jazz and and they're doing things in Headley Park, and they're doing community things. So that's one aspect where I think David's going to really try to move even further. Okay. But otherwise, I think he's really just building off of what Roger and Lori have established, which is it's amazing when you look at the number of classes and the types of classes and the variety of things that they offer at the Jazz Workshop. I mean, it's
Well, to do that for a living, to be a jazz musician, you have to know the standards, and you have to know the chords that go with those standards. You need to be able to sit down and improvise them. Right. And that's a practical skill. Right. 300, 400 years ago, an organist would have to know how to read figured bass in order to sort of improvise what's going on at the cathedral. Right. And that's what music is, and jazz is that kind of an improvised language. Right. So yeah, it's a practical skill, and that's what they bring. And Lori was teaching at Belmont, and a lot of students actually followed her out of college to come work with her, at the workshop, because they have that journeyman apprentice method, which is the method that is the tried and true method of how you learn how to be a musician.
Right.
We have schools, conservatories, and you can go there and you get a really good academic education. You get a graduation robe with all these stripes on them. But at the end of the day, it's the folks, who've actually been out there on a stage doing it professionally. That's how you become a good musician.
Well, I think from what I'm told at both the workshop and at Blur is that you strike a balance between the academic foundation and the actual playing experience where you develop your own sound. And if you're a composer, you start thinking about what you want to write that's going to differentiate your work from somebody else. I mean, these are things, some of these things you can't get in a classroom, but you can get the tools to develop them on your own. And that's what I think that the workshop and Blur both, they try to push that balance.
Yeah. Let's switch over to talk about our favorite albums of the year. And they can be Nashville albums, or they can be just your own personal favorite. I'm going to have to cheat because some of my favorite didn't come out of Nashville, I have to admit. So, but anyway, let me start with you, Steve. What really did you like? What was out there that was really stand out?
I don't know. I guess I've kind of entered my ambient dad era, in a sense. I get there are so many different folks who are working in different kinds of music that bring together, ideas from folk and ideas from jazz and ideas from minimalist art music composition and other stuff. And a lot of that came together in the work that William Tyler put out this year. He had 2 different albums. The one that I personally liked the best was Time Indefinite, which was his solo record that he did with engineer Jake Davis. It was kind of a thing that they used a lot of. William had come into possession of a reel-to-reel tape recorder, like a dictation machine type thing that belonged to his grandfather, and they used that to do like some Eno and Fripp tape loop kind of things. It's like there's a lot of thought that goes into this sort of stuff, and there is a lot of concept and idea in some ways, but also it's very emotional and communicative. And I think in some ways a lot of the stuff, like, they use the thought to develop a framework to work in, but then there's a lot of improvisation and that kind of thing that becomes a part of it. And just the result of that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. Like, that record was wonderful. I really enjoyed also Joe Shornikov. She's an organist, or she plays keys. She's married to Matthew Hoke from Phosphorescent and plays keys in that band and for other bands. She's also this year did an ambient organ record called Quiet Excerpts, which was just, it's one of those things that it's like, it just kind of takes your breath away.
I have not heard it. I'm going to check it out. A friend of mine who's the rock critic with Gannett some years ago, he would get into that kind of music every now and then. I mean, he was a hardcore Springsteen, John Prine kind of, critic, but he would get into that. He was surprised. But that kind of music can just wash over you, and before you know it, you're lost in it.
Yeah, and it's so much that it's like, it doesn't necessarily, like, there's some of this kind of music that is, meant to be just for relaxation or something like that. But yeah, there's a whole field of it that is intentional in different ways, which, I don't know, there's some really fascinating stuff to explore there.
Well, I'm going to have to link into that. I'll have a link to that in our podcast blog. You were mentioning this sort of diverse stuff. I think I was really taken with, and I'm always taken with anything Kendrick Lamar is doing. But if you listen to a song like Luther, that song has a little bit of everything. When you think about it, it's got hip hop, you've got some, blues, R&B influences in there, and even some symphonic sweep. I mean, who else, what other mind can do that? right now. It's really amazing. I'd have to say this is where I'll go ahead and cheat, and I'm gonna probably talk about Turnstile. And I mean, that's sort of where I come from in this world, and their album and their song Never Enough is something that I think I've probably listened to now so many times that I probably have 10% less hearing than I did in 2024.
Yeah.
It is just such a good song. But I highly, highly recommend that. Well, what are you listening to? What did you like, Ron?
Well, I'm going to have to fudge a little bit because I'm actually in the midst of getting ready to do my list for the Francis Davis Critics Poll.
Okay.
But I will say, and this is probably not going to be eligible for this year, but I'm working on a piece for someone else on the new Mavis Staples, and it is phenomenal. It's I mean, she sounds like a 26-year-old instead of an 86-year-old, which is what she is.
How interesting.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, but as far as local albums, Jeff, to pivot back to somebody we talked about before, Jeff Coffin did a great record this year, in which half of it was with an African rhythmic ensemble, and the other half of it was with various musicians around town, Wooten Brothers and some others, and that was a great record. And you caught me by surprise. I didn't think we were going to talk about records today.
Oh, no, we're going to talk about.
So I wasn't.
Well, you've got records coming out of here.
Yeah.
Well, and I've had so many though, and I'll have to speak about some of the country stuff. I really was impressed, and I didn't think I would be necessarily, but with Tyler Childers and what he was coming out with, Nose to the Grindstone, which to me, you know, as I think I mentioned to Steve, is heading a little bit in the direction of John Prine. There's Prine's got, there's a hole in Daddy's arm where the money goes, and which is, the song that actually I think probably made him famous. And then of course Tyler Childers has, keep your nose to the grindstone, not in the pills. It's a similar kind of thought, but I mean, really interesting stuff. Of course, you've also got Shabuzi and his Good News.
Right.
Great song, great video, great everything. I think maybe at least in Nashville, that might be my favorite for this year. Really good.
And he's one person who seems to be oblivious to a lot of the barriers. I mean, for whatever reason, he seems to be well liked across the board.
That's because he's not mid.
Yeah, the
he's
country,
just plain good.
Yeah, the country traditionalists seem to like him. The newer fans seem to like him. And even folk who don't necessarily like country music seem to like him.
Yeah, well, he's electric, and he sounds different.
Yeah.
And it's new, and who doesn't like that?
Right.
When it's executed on a really high level, and that's what I was kind of.
I would like to mention real quick, if I could, the latest Chris Stone Ingram, which Tom Hambridge produced, cut it here in town again, and of the upcoming blues of the upcoming blues people. Both he and Shamika Copeland do all the recording here in town, and those to me are the male and female, and right along with Gary Clark. Those are the ones that I would say are the best as far as blues albums, contemporary blues people. So. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to mention one other country person, though, and that's Chris Stapleton, who's just always good, but Bad As I Used to Be. What a great, that's almost like a blues song, that is just such a great tune.
Well, that's the guy that cut his teeth with Albert King, which doesn't get mentioned a lot, but that's actually, he credits that with a lot of his development as far as playing in and songwriting. So, yeah.
We're speaking with Nashville Scene music editor Stephen Tregesser and jazz critic Ron Wynn. We'll be back after this important message.
TriStar Hendersonville Medical Center is proud to support arts education through its partnership with Mott Haven Arts and Cultural Center. As a trusted healthcare leader in Sumner County, TriStar Hendersonville believes creativity fosters community well-being. Through its support of the MAC, the Medical Center helps equip students with the skills, confidence, and inspiration they need to pursue their artistic passions. Creativity heals here. For more information, go to tristarhealth.com.
We're back with our Year in Music panel, Steve Tregesser and Ron Wynn. Steve, let me ask you a little bit about our hip hop scene again, a little bit deeper, because I think if I was reading last year's Year in Music, there were some predictions about 6-1 Tribe and some of the other folks in our hip hop scene. Did they sort of live up to their expectations? What do you think?
I mean, it's a year that was very big for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I didn't necessarily see as much of like I don't know, sort of like the critical mass stuff with folks sort of doing a lot of stuff together. But I mean, there were a ton of great releases. 6-1 Tribe in particular has often had like in since they've come together, they've had usually like a collective record every year. Mm-hmm. They did not do that this time, but they put on a new version of their 615 Day Fest, which they kind of really, they talked about intentionally wanting to spread it out to different genres and keep growing that festival. They did that. You had some really phenomenal work from Daisha McBride, who, one, just made some really great music that was just her music that she was putting out. But two, she had a track that got in a Downy commercial that I've seen probably 200 times. And it's just like, in a city where there's not necessarily all this kind of infrastructure for these artists, it's like they're all trying to figure out how to build stuff for themselves and for each other. And, looking at stuff like commercial placement is huge for a lot of these artists.
Right.
We had, there was...
now, WNXP has helped out with that a
very
little bit,
much.
hasn't it? I mean,
yes.
I think I know people who've actually first heard of this music through WNXP.
Yeah.
So what a great service they do to us. I have a
absolutely.
lot of friends who actually donate monthly to them. So
yeah.
Please do. Keep the music going.
It's an incredible station.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a longtime local producer, a fellow named A.B. Eastwood. He came up, Nashville native guy. He came up through Nashville School of the Arts, and recently became a Nashville expat. But he was part of a group of local folks, plus somebody from somewhere else, who were tapped to warm up the crowd for Coldplay at Nissan Stadium this year. I mean, people. The word is getting out, and people are paying attention, and hopefully that just keeps leading to seeing more people grow. Because I mean, that's been the case, kind of forever and a day. It's like the talent is there, mm-hmm. and the drive is there. It's just people trying to find the lane, find the tools, find the on ramp. Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that the scene always does in its year in music is it has a little section on the people we've lost during the year. Tell us a little bit about that, Steve.
Well, it's always a very bittersweet thing just looking back at the lives of all these folks who've done so much. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, people might not even really realize how much. But there were definitely some big names like Raul Malo, who just passed away this week as we're recording this. Steve Cropper, Todd Snyder. But then you also had folks like Riley Hedrick, who was co-owner with her son Todd of Vinyl Tap, which is the neighborhood bar, music venue, and record store that went in where the Family Wash used to be for old Nashville heads. You had the passing of Travis Collinsworth, who was the co-owner of the Five Spots club that's been huge for a bunch of different music scenes in Nashville. Even the host venue for Sunday Night Soul for so many years, mm-hmm. And so many other like weekly and monthly events and as well as like touring bands. It's overwhelming sometimes just looking at the losses, but it's like, these are, it takes so many people with so many different talents and so much passion to make the city possible.
Yeah.
And or to bring it to its potential.
Yeah. Were there any, and this is on a different subject now, were there any surprises that came up for you guys, that either of you, that something that happened that you were like, I never would have expected that?
Well, I don't. It wasn't a huge surprise, but it was exciting to see how well the first 615 Indie Live did. That was this festival that was sort of a joint venture between the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corp and Music Venue Alliance Nashville, where they, back in February, put on, I think it was, I can't remember the number of artists, but it was like simultaneous shows at like all day on a Saturday at, I think it was like 13 or 14 different sites, some of which had multiple stages. So it was like 17 different stages,
right,
or something like that. And you know, you had the Wooten Brothers playing down at Rudy's. You had punk bands at Dark Matter. You had I think 6-1 Tribe was playing at the Basement. Had a sort of hip hop show there. You had people up at Dee's Country Cocktail Lounge doing country and Americana stuff. Just kind of all over the map. And I think it was something like over 2,000 tickets sold to this first one. It was the first time they'd done it, and they're bringing it back this coming February. I think they just announced the lineup. Of course, the people playing escape me because I'm just buried in data. But
that's not just a surprise, though. That's very exciting. Wow! I mean, what a very cool scene.
Yeah. I'm so excited that turned out so well.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have any predictions for the new year? What do you think's kind of on our horizon?
Well, I guess I'd say and I'm not big on predictions, but if I had to make a prediction, okay, I think someone is going to emerge out of the Nashville jazz and blues community that's going to take off that has not yet taken off. If I just had this, and I mean that's kind of, I guess, a nebulous thing, but I there's 2 or 3 people who are doing a lot of stuff, but for whatever reason, their profile hasn't expanded yet. I think that's going to happen in 2026.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, it's hard to already believe, but that's about 2026 is almost here. But yeah.
It is almost here. Well, I mean, and part of the reason I asked that question is that there are so many changes in the way people who are musicians get their music out there and maybe hopefully get paid for it. Not always easy in the business now. We also have AI in the mix, which I kind of think of when it comes to music as being like demon AI. I can't, right. I'm not sure what good it's going to do us in the music community, but so what else do you guys think?
Well, one of the big things that I'm always watching is what's going on in venue world. I mean, I keep coming back to it, but partly just because it keeps generating so many stories. I mean, one of the big things that happened, another of the big things that happened in 2025 was, the Metro put up the operating contract for Ascend Amphitheater, our 6,800 cap amphitheater right by the river, and beating out much bigger competitors was Opry Hospitality. And so they're, starting this coming year, going to be in charge of it. Seeing how that goes will be something. I mean, they definitely have, like looking at the Grand Ole Opry House. That's a venue that has not quite the same capacity, but about 2/3 of the way there. It's like they've been running that for a long time. They certainly have the experience and the staff. We'll just see how it goes.
Okay. Well, as far as predictions go, let me put you out on a limb. Who's going to win the Grammy? Who's going to win the most Grammys this year in 2026? Do you think? Because a lot of these guys are multiple nominees.
Yeah.
I guess pulling for some hometown talent. I mean, I think I would really have to check and make sure, but I believe this would be, if she got any of the ones she's nominated for, this would be like a first-time solo win for Hayley Williams. I mean, her group Paramore has done that a bunch.
Gosh,
but,
I am pulling for that.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many deserving people on that list. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
What do you think, Ryan?
If I had to pick a name just off the top, it'd be Kendrick Lamar. I think he's going to get at least 2, maybe 3. You know.
All right.
If I could also say, and I don't see this happening, but if I could have my wish for 2026, I would love to see and this may get me in trouble with some of my friends, I would love to see what I would consider to be a mainstream jazz station, similar to what WMLT was before they made the change. And I understand why they made the change, and I don't even begrudge them doing that, because what WMLT is now is needed. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with what they do, but I just love that there's not a terrestrial place for a lot of really good jazz stuff, including a lot of stuff that comes out of here. Mm-hmm. So
sometimes, you know, these changes they're frustrating when they happen, but sometimes they have positive effects. I mean, I think WNXP is a very good example. I think they were broadcasting classical music,
right?
And a lot of people were angry when Nashville stopped doing that. You know, I mean, like, good grief, what other places have classical stations like Louisville, you know, or Atlanta? But none of those places are called Music City, and yet you can't deny the fact that WNXP has made a huge, I would argue, and now I'll get in trouble, a much bigger contribution doing what it's doing now than it ever would have doing the old classical stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they are, and John, you're probably old enough to remember when there was such a thing as Freeform FM. That's what they are. I mean, if you just, you know, cut through the minutia, they're in the tradition of Freeform FM. And I remember when I'm old enough to remember when Freeform FM first started, and how excited it was that, oh, wow, now we've got an eclectic station, and it sounds really good because it's FM, it's not AM. Now, I mean, that sounds antiquated today now, but back then it was very, very exciting. Mm-hmm. And that's what XNP to me symbolizes, is the kind of spirit from the Freeform FM days.
Okay.
Or pirate radio, which, you know, I guess they still got some of those around. I don't know if we got any around here, but, you know.
Okay. Well, my prediction, I think I'd have to, I'm going to piggyback off you. I think Kendrick Lamar is going to be the big winner. And if it comes back as Sabrina Carpenter, then I will hang up this microphone and never broadcast another thing for as long as I live, because I can't see that happening. Well, okay, guys, I really appreciate your taking some time. All I can say is I really hope that 2026 was at least half as good as 2025 when it comes to music, because this was a good and satisfying year. So, Steve, Ron, thank you for appearing on Mac Talk.
Thank you for having me.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to Mac Talk from Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center. Our mission is to educate, elevate, and encourage our community through the transformative power of the arts. If you're interested in transforming your creative life, check out our website at monthavenarts.org. Our guests for today's Year in Music Roundtable were Stephen Tragesser and Ron Wynn. Our podcast music was written by Nashville composer Christina Spinay. I'm Kennedy Galpin. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.